Hello and welcome. It's Thursday. It's exciting. We're one day closer to the weekend. Welcome to our virtual happy hour. I'm your host, Greg Avila, founder of Untapped. It is excited to see you. We'll see you virtually on this particular happy hour. We got an amazing guest, but before we get to that guest, we're going to talk a little bit about our Untapped 10th anniversary. In case you haven't heard, we made some updates today to our Untapped landing page and a little bit more about how we're collecting some stories for you. So I want to show you some updates we've done to our page. We're at 57 breweries now that have committed to brew the beer. I remember my first check-in. We have a map where you can actually zoom in and see all the details about all the breweries that are there, as well as you see a brewery that you don't have up there yet and you want to suggest them, you can use the form to suggest it and share it out on social to get them to actually brew the beer from there. But the most important part of what we're trying to do here is two things. The badge contest. We're having a live stream on the 24th of October where we're going to be doing all these crazy things to celebrate the 10th anniversary, and you could design our badge for it. So get to the untapped.com/10, scroll down to the bottom of the badge contest and fill out what badge for what it means to be an member of the Untapped community. And we're accepting these submissions all starting today, and we'll be able to collect them and look at them, and you can see all the information on this page itself. So check out untapped.com/10/contest and enter in your badge design. That's going to tell you all about our live stream, and it'll be featured on the live stream itself. We're also collecting stories from you. We're doing a documentary on Tapped. Maybe it's going to be like The Last Dance. We don't know. We're going to collect all your stories and put them together, and you can submit those stories too at this link down here called Share Your Story, and you'll be able to kind of go in from there. So we hope you guys check us out. All the new features we added to the particular website, untapped.com/10, all the great news about our 10th anniversary. And now that that's aside, I want to bring on my guest for the night, Michael Orton. He is the co-founder of Night Shift Brewing up in Massachusetts. Michael, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Really exciting stuff. I'm a huge fan of your brewery, and we're excited to talk about all the new things that you guys are having in the works and some of the stuff that was announced just a couple of days ago. But before we get into that, we always drink some beer on this virtual happy hour. That's the most important part. So, Michael, what are you drinking in your glass on your side of this virtual happy hour?
I haven't poured it into a glass yet, but I am drinking our Santilli
Nice.
American IPA. Won the bronze medal in the World Beer Cup a few years ago, and I love this beer.
There you go. Well, I love that beer too, but unfortunately I wasn't able to grab that beer for this particular session. So I'm grabbing not from Bruce, which is a brewery out in Denver, Colorado. This is their outside the Scope IPA. It's a Belgian inspired brewery, and this is a Belgian inspired IPA, and very refreshing to have one of these than having a traditional hazy IPA from there. So if you're out there right now and you're drinking a beer, crack it open right now, pour it into your vessel of choice, whether that's going to be a can out of the can specifically or in a glass. And remind you to check in your beer on Untapped as well. We'd love to see what you're checking into tonight, or you can use the comment on Facebook and Twitter to be able to illustrate where you're having and what you're having on there. So I've had a good streak of pouring beer. It's been a problem of mine all these shows. I just broke that streak right now, so I apologize to the fans out there. So cheers to Michael. Cheers to you for being on the show, and cheers to everybody out there, and enjoy your beverage. A lot of foam there. A lot of foam. All right. Well, Michael, let's get a brief overview of your background and a little bit of how you get started with Night Shift and a little bit more about Night Shift as a whole.
Sure. Yeah. So basically, we started in Somerville, Massachusetts. I had moved down from, I went to college up in Maine, and myself and one of our other founders, Rob, came down to Boston, started living in Somerville, and we both were working jobs in that area in 2007. And almost immediately, once we had our own apartment, we were, buying a lot of beer. And then also we decided, like, well, while we're buying it, we might as well start making some as well. And so we started home brewing, and for 5 years, we basically went from amateur home brewers to crazy hobby-driven, still amateur home brewers with just like a lot more expensive equipment. And at about like the year 3.5 mark, I think at that point we were like, we love this so much, let's start a brewery, but how the heck would we ever do that? And we started hosting tasting parties. We'd have people come to the door, and they were expecting to just come in and drink beer casually, and we had like a little tasting card. It was the early version of Untapped, basically. pre digital.
Right.
And it was just rate the beer, tell us what you think, give comments, and then we'll use that to as feedback to evolve our recipes. And so homebrewers for 5 years. Our third founder, Mike, joined us about halfway through that as well. And finally, we raised some startup money, about 100K, and put together a business plan. And we started tiny in Everett in 2012.
That's amazing. Just to see the kind of growth of your brand. How many states do you distribute to right now for your product as a whole?
So most of our product is still within Massachusetts. We have opened up a few states. Maine was our first, and then since then we're also in New York, mostly New York City, New Hampshire, and very recently we announced that we're opening a distribution company, Night Shift Distributing, in Connecticut, and we'll be distributing our product ourselves down in Connecticut. So mostly Mass, but we're expanding outward in New England. The whole focus is keeping it really within our backyard right now. We always say don't go deep, not wide. And so that's been the focus. And fortunately, we're surrounded by people that love our beer, and that's a good thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll definitely get into that new distribution company in Connecticut. I know it just happened this week that we had an announcement, but just in case you joined us late, we're talking to Michael, who is a co-founder and owner of Night Shift Brewing up in Everett, Massachusetts. If you have a question for Michael, we want to put him on the hot seat right now. He looks pretty comfortable.
Please.
We gotta put him on the hot seat here. So let's ask him some questions here. Use your platform, whether it's Twitter, YouTube, or Facebook, wherever you're watching this. Ask some questions. We'd love to put them on the screen for Michael to answer. I guess I'll start here with this topic here of the Connecticut distribution company that you guys announced this week. We were just chatting before in the pre-show about how I used to see you being in Connecticut on the shelves here earlier this year, and then there was kind of a disappearing act, and now you guys are coming back. Talk about the process here of why Connecticut from your distribution perspective, and where you want to move in from that side.
Totally. So our distribution story goes back. All right, I'll give the very, very quick history of it because it's worth going through this part. We started in 2012 by self-distributing our product out of a Subaru, right? So driving it around, dropping it off in the back of a Subaru. Fast forward to 2016, still doing it ourselves, not signing up with a distributor in Massachusetts. We had a Sprinter van, and I think that was it, maybe like one refrigerated box truck. So we'd upgraded from the Subaru, but small little fleet. And we decided we sort of there's a volume cap on how much you can distribute in Massachusetts legally. And so we decided, instead of signing with a distributor to expand our market presence, we created our own distribution company in Massachusetts, Night Shift Distributing. So now we sell our product to ourselves, drive it around. That's very much a statement against the archaic laws in Massachusetts that basically tie you to a distributor for life, marriage without divorce. It's crazy stuff. Can't believe it hasn't been questioned earlier. But anyway, we're trying to work through that now. Now, fast forward even further. We have always wanted to be in Connecticut. We have so many fans there, and we hear from people all the time, like, I would love your beer down here. You're a neighboring state. Like, why can't you get it down to us? We've often had capacity issues where we just can't make enough beer to serve the markets that we want to. But last year we ended up having enough capacity to hit Connecticut. So we talked to our distributor, Serene, who we work with in New York, and they operate in Connecticut as well. And we said, we want to enter the state. It's illegal for us to open a distribution branch in Connecticut. Some states you can't, some you can. So we were like, we hope to do this in Connecticut at some point. We're doing it in Mass. But while we figure that out, will you help us seed the market and get out there? And they were totally on board. They're awesome guys. And they knew sort of the big picture was we'd eventually start our own, but they were willing to sort of work with us in the beginning and help us get into the market. So we were in Connecticut for 6 or 7 months. And we were like ready to transition to our own. And then our lease fell through, and it was just one thing after another. So we ended up pulling out of Connecticut, sadly. And now we're back in again. And this time, as we announced earlier this week, we have our own warehouse now, and we'll be selling it to ourselves and distributing it through our own distribution company, along with a portfolio of other brands. We're going to bring a few other brands along the way.
Fantastic. Well, obviously you have a lot of fans, and not just in Connecticut, but around the globe here. I'll put some comments up on the screen for some shout outs here. This one's from Michael. It's been enjoying Night Shift since it first came to Mass Liquors in Worcester. Love all the beers. Cheers.
Cheers, Michael.
That's pretty awesome. Great picture, by the way, Michael. I like that as well.
That's awesome.
Here's another question that just got popped into the channel here from Mike. And Mike said, outside your distribution reach, but what styles are in your wheelhouse? What style do you find most challenging from a brewing perspective?
That's great. I would say I'll point to two styles that I would say are within our wheelhouse. And the challenging one's a good question. Since the very beginning, we've put a huge focus on doing sours. I think our 5th beer ever was a sour beer. So we've become really comfortable with making sours. We release beers pretty much every season, part of the series called the Weiss series. Ever Weiss is one of our oldest and longest beers in that series. Right now, I think Ricky Weiss is out, which is a raspberry and lime sour ale. So we're very comfortable with sours. We love sours. And then, the other part that is now in our wheelhouse didn't used to be, I would say, is just hoppy beers. We had a lot of discomfort brewing hoppy beers our first 2 years. Part of it was, I think, when we started, we were like, we're not going to brew an IPA. There's too many out there. Why would we bother? And it's too easy. Let's do something more interesting. So we started with some funky stuff. We did like a Habanero Rye Ale, a green tea and honey and orange peel beer, and I think those made a good presence for us, and they got us on the scene, and people were like, this is interesting, but there's only so many people that want to drink a rye ale with habaneros. It's a niche interest market. So anyway, we ended up, honestly, I'll credit our team, like we ended up hiring some people that like really understood how to make hoppy beers, and our confidence level really skyrocketed as soon as like we had a lab program and we knew how to use hops the right way. So now, Santilli, an American IPA, we do the 87, which is a double IPA. One of our other flagships is Whirlpool, a New England Pale Ale. And Fluffinity is our latest. It's a New England IPA. It's the juiciest thing I've ever had. So, hoppy beers now are sort of where we're incredibly comfortable, but we didn't start that way. As far as the style that I find the most challenging, honestly, it's the simplest styles. It's like pilsners, lagers. The cleaner and simpler the beer, the harder it is to make, because you can't hide behind anything. All mistakes are just like, they're out there. You can taste them. We brew it. We put out a beer called it's Nightlight. It's a craft light lager. It is our attack on Bud Light. It is just a better tasting light lager. That is a ridiculously hard beer to make taste really good, because you screw it up just a little bit and everyone's going to taste it. It's got flavor, but like it's not the same kind of like slap you in the face flavor as an IPA. But you can't mask anything. It's all right there.
Yeah, I've heard that from many brewers from that perspective. Everyone just overlooks those styles because they're more the OG kind of styles, but it takes the longest time from that perspective to kind of brew and make sure that it's sufficient. And I've had your the light beer that you're mentioning, and it's fantastic. It's very, very good. It's definitely one of those beers I recommend to a lot of people that are just getting into craft beer that want that lighter kind of beer of choice, but not completely overwhelming them with hops or things like that they're not used to. Also, mowing the lawn on a Sunday when it's hot and sweaty and you just want to get a light beer. Sometimes that stuff's good. I'm a huge fan of those things.
There's a beer for every occasion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Here's another question that popped up, more than not a question, but more of a plead. Obviously, Eric Blair just saying, I love if your beers could magically appear in the DC area.
Me
too. This is my longest stretch I've gone without visiting Massachusetts, and I'm missing my night shift fix. Ultimately, when you're building distribution that you have here, is the goal to keep them in the New England area, or does it help you kind of almost have hot spots that you're jumping to kind of eventually expand a much deeper route? Is that kind of the goal with the distribution networks?
Yeah, we look at DC and we talk about DC. There's a number of different markets, especially on the East Coast. I think it gets trickier logistically once you start looking west. Just freshness, right? Getting fresh beer to the West Coast. We produce Whirlpool, which has like the shortest shelf life. It's delicate, and sending that to the West Coast sounds like a logistical nightmare. That said, yeah, we look at the East Coast all the time and talk about which markets would we want to enter next. And I think, I mean, the best way I can put it is we constantly grow by letting the customer tell us how quickly we should grow. We don't sort of create a number and say we're going to hit that. That's our target,
Right.
and we're going to grow no matter what happens. And if we have to open 10 new states to hit it, we'll do that. It's very much, if there's more demand, we'll grow our capacity to try and meet it. It's a good problem we've had that we haven't really been able to go much further than the 4 or 5 states we're in. But we definitely hope to, keep going. I would love to be in DC, and Eric, I would love to get you some beer.
You heard it here first, Eric. You've heard it here from the co-founder.
It's definitely, in the long-term plan. It's just figuring out how to make the beer to get there. Yeah,
absolutely.
Harder than it sounds.
One of the things you guys have a lot of, and I had a chance to visit some of your locations in Boston, is that you've kind of spread out. You have the the summer kind of outdoor space from that perspective. You have the Lovejoy kind of bar and restaurant down there, right outside of the garden there in Boston. How does this kind of translate into your overall strategy from your brewery? Is it more about trying to find smaller spots to kind of facilitate, or is it more about just spreading the worth there and getting beers to your bars from that perspective?
You mean just having tap rooms?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, obviously a lot of breweries have just one tap room, at their main location, but you guys have a couple of locations around Boston that you've kind of spread the wealth there. Is that more of a strategy of just because you want to have different aspects from, like, you have the food there and obviously the bar? What's the strategy around having those there?
I think, the simplest answer is it kind of goes back to like day one. We opened our brewery and we were in a tiny little creepy warehouse in Everett that was like a long, dangerous feeling walk down this like dark corridor. I mean, anyone who's watching who used to go to our brewery, thank you for like bearing through it with that journey. It was rough. And so we opened thinking, all right, well, no one's going to visit us, so we're going to have to go out to bars and restaurants and bring our beer. We're going to be a wholesale brewery. We're not going to have a tap room. We built a little tap room just in case anyone did stop by. We didn't want to have nothing.
Right.
And people came to us, and we had lines out the doors within, a few months. And so I think we quickly learned, like, there's a real interest level in connecting with the brewery hands-on, like meeting the people who are behind the business and drinking the beer in the same place where it's made, and drinking it, the stuff that maybe doesn't hit the market all the time. Most of all of our, direct to consumer locations have beers that never see shelves or taps elsewhere. And so I think being able to offer the customer like that, like as close as you can get to like the heart of the brand experience, is huge for us and for them. We get feedback. Like, I used to bartend, so I'd hear from people just like, I like this, I don't like this, this is why, this is what I'm thinking about, this is what I'm drinking besides you guys. And now, our taproom team, they're the front lines on the hospitality side, and they're getting feedback and sharing it with us. So, it's strategic in that, like, it's awesome to be able to interact with customers that way and get that kind of feedback, and it gives them an awesome experience that I don't think they would forget, and it's very memorable. If you only know a brewery by its cans on the shelf, I think it's harder to sort of think about like what that brewery is and what its personality is, and like what is its heart. So there's that, and I think with Lovejoy in Boston, like being able to do food is really fun. It's also a nightmare, so it's like food is such a challenge. But it's cool to combine beer and food. Beer and food pairings is, everyone knows it's incredibly fun if you can do it well. Yeah, we have a blast. Talking to people, seeing people come in is amazing. And then I think it helps with people buying beer on the shelves because they've been to our space and know who we are.
Yeah, you have the Owl's Nest, which is the name of your outdoor seasonal space that you mentioned. You have the Lovejoy location, and obviously has some exclusive beers that are made in that area. From that perspective, it just, I had a chance to visit the Lovejoy location. It's just a kind of cool little spot. Obviously,
nice.
It's before COVID hit down from all that situation, but it's just a very unique kind of feel. I think all all your locations are somewhat different, and I assume that's by design in terms of the look and feel and the experience. And I think it's really cool to be able to kind of have that opportunity to test some things out and do trial batches and get them out to different areas. I assume Boston's your biggest market from that area, so it's important to have those there. But ultimately, as you grow, are there any decisions or thoughts on replicating that experience in other areas you distribute, or is it more of a locality thing that you guys are based in Massachusetts and that's where you guys are going to be?
No, it's a good question. Connecticut is actually a good example where I don't think we've even landed on like, should we have a tap room, for example, in Connecticut?
Right.
That one to me is slightly trickier because like we're almost close enough to Connecticut where like you could make the journey up and like experience our brand, but is it asking people too much? We abandoned a plan to open a brewery in Pennsylvania earlier this year when the pandemic hit, and we just it financially didn't look smart. But in Pennsylvania, we were going to open a brewery, a tap room, like do the whole thing, a patio, like whole experience, because I think PA is far enough away from Boston where like if you're buying on the shelves of PA, you're never going to have a tap room experience unless we put one, in Philly.
Right. Agreed. Yeah, and that makes sense too. A lot of breweries that are in multiple states too, from a taproom perspective, it gets kind of confusing for the consumer. They think that maybe you're there from that perspective too. So I definitely understand that from that side of the piece there. Let's put some more stuff on the screen here. This one's from Michael, and Michael says, it just disappeared off my screen. That's great. Well, we'll come back to that a little later.
He said, I love your beer.
He basically said I got Night Shift delivered to my house, and I guess I shouldn't complain now. So, Michael, we appreciate that. I'm sure that Michael does. The other Michael does as well. I think one of the cool things about what you guys do is your attention to detail when it comes to both packaging, design, and in terms of look and feel. It definitely has a above average, brand recognition. When you're building out these kind of designs and stuff like that, are you looking at other breweries for inspirations in terms of the way that they label things, or you guys have your own internal kind of process on how you guys put labels and designs together? Like, for example, how you laid out the love your location and the things that are part of it. How does that come together?
Yeah, no, that's I appreciate the comment. It's really nice of you to say. And we try to be as deliberate and as intentional as possible about our designs, and that does go from everything from package design to hospitality locations. I mean, at the core of it, like I think, when you interact with any part of our product, whether that's a tap room or a can, there's some reflection of like who we are as a brand and like what that means. It's a signal that our can, as you said, is intentionally thoughtfully designed and not floppy, right? It's a signal that when you walk in, the space feels, thoughtfully laid out and not a total mess, and that the floors are clean, and that the bartender greets you with a smile. I mean, those are all signals about something bigger, a statement about the brewery. And so we absolutely look to other breweries. I think we constantly take inspiration from not even other breweries, but other businesses, other brands. For package design, we're constantly we're just sharing labels around with each other and just saying, what do you think of this? And I do like this, I don't like that. For our cans, very specifically, like all of our flagships, you can see like we try and keep them fairly clean on the front. So like they all have, we really lean really hard into our logo. The owl is like always big. It used to be, I'll say on our bottles, back when we used to do bottles, that's no longer a thing for us really. But back in 2012, the owl was pretty small, and this is just one of those things where you have to be comfortable evolving. We got lots of customers saying like, love the owl. And we were just like, all right, let's make it a little bigger. And then finally it was just like, okay, it's enormous. This is what's helping us sell. So let's just keep it huge. And then for our flagships, it's just one white color in the background and then like another color, whether it's a hop vine for Chantilly, Whirlpool's a yellow swirl, Fluffinity is an orange sort of juicy cloud thing. We try and keep it somewhat simple but interesting. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to ask you about where the word Night Shift came from in terms of the owl as well. But I have to put this comment up that I just saw in in the thread here, and this person said, I have the Night Shift logo
Oh,
tattooed on my
love that.
shoulder. Been a fan from the very beginning. That's pretty epic. I mean, you have to be a serious fan to be able to do that. So,
He is a serious fan. He's like, I mean, I know raising the bar stool well, and he's been a supporter since day one, and constantly interacting with him on social. So,
nice.
and in person. So I appreciate the love, and thanks for all the support.
Awesome. Well, in terms of the Night Shift logo or in the name, where did it come from, and how did the owl will come to be for your kind of namesake there?
I don't even know if we've shared this story. Well, we've shared some of it, but I have a story that, like, I'm not even sure. I was talking about it with Rob, the other co-founder, the other day. So way back, what was it, like 2009? We were home brewing, and we were just like, we were sharing. We were making a lot of beer, and
Right.
way too much for like a home brewer, right? Like, we couldn't keep up with drinking it. Like, it was an obscene amount of volume, and our living, like, we had two sort of living spaces, and one of the rooms was just completely filled with carboys and buckets, and like, our landlord would come by and be like, "What are you doing? Like, this is not like, this is not in the lease."
Right.
And so we had so much beer, we had to start giving it away to friends because it was just, we weren't drinking it fast enough, and there were 6 people living in that apartment. So we ended up, we'd have these bottles and we'd give them to people, but they'd be like Harpoon bottles or Sam Adams bottles, because we would just drink that stuff and then
Use the
refill it with our
bottle.
own beer.
Yeah.
That's what you do in your home brew a lot of the time. And they'd always be like, I don't know what this is. It looks like torn up Harpoon, like the label's all messed up. And so we were like, okay, we got to, like, get serious about this. We're going to make our own labels. We're going to get some, like, stickers from Staples or whatever, print on those, and we got to give ourselves a name and make it feel a little more cool when we're giving our bottles to our friends. So we spent, like, I don't know, 2 weeks talking about names, and we were just like, all right, you know what? We do this when we get home from work. Like, this is our night shift hobby, right? Our day shift is working desk jobs, and our night shift is brewing. We'd usually start at like 7 or 8 p.m. after dinner and just brew until 2 in the morning. So, Night Shift, right? That's where we all agreed, like, great name. We'll be called the Night Shift Brewers. And then of course it was like, all right, let's talk logos, because you got to have a symbol to put on, the
Right.
bottle with your, we're pretending we were real. And the first idea thrown out, this is what I'm not sure we've shared before. The first idea thrown out was this, literally like a knight, right? Like a knight in shining armor knight, stirring like a mash tun that was like brick or stone or something.
That's
And
awesome.
he had like this big stick, and it looked fine, but it looked ridiculous, and it didn't scale down well. And, like,
Yeah.
we were all just like, okay, well, that's not going to work. So then I ended up just I was like, all right, you know what? We're going to do something like an animal. An animal's cool. They're like lively, and let's do an animal. Let's do a bird, because birds fly. I don't know. It felt cool. So I ended up spending like a month just drawing owls, and I'm like, Des, I have a notebook that's filled with these owls, and I have like 200 of them, and it was just like one terrible owl after the next. And I finally figured out that I could turn the owl into like a hop owl. Like, I mean, I'll show, but like, it looks like a hop cone,
Yep.
and it's obviously an owl. So I figured that out, and I was like beyond thrilled with myself for like hitting that aha moment. And then I was still not happy with the way it looked, because it looked too creepy or it looked too nice. And then we finally landed. I just hit one where I was like, oh my God, that's it. I'm done. Like, I could stop drawing. I imported it into Photoshop like that night, sent it around to the group. I could pull it up, but there's like an email chain, I'm sure, that's just like, oh my God, this is our logo. And everyone was like, sweet, we got one done. Let's put it on the next bottle.
There you go.
And this was it.
Nice.
Yeah. So
That's
that's
a
the
great
long
story.
story. Yeah.
That's an awesome story. Yeah, we have one. Obviously, Mark here says love the Hop Owl logo, so you obviously
Nice.
have a big fan on that front as well. It's great to see the evolution there of the small idea you had coming to this whole piece right here, and it's awesome to see that kind of start from that perspective. We had a similar moment from the Untapped logo as well. You kind of remember that we have the bottles crossed which is right now, which is the two bottles that were crossed. But when we first started, the bottles were on the top and they were just like tipping like this. And we actually had a cease and desist sent to us that was for a place in Austin, Texas, which was nunchucks. Looked kind of like nunchucks. And then they got confused and we're like, okay, well, we're going to change them anyways, so might as well just change it. So we've done it numerous times, iterated through that process, trying to figure out what looks good, whether it's completely crossed, whether there's a logo around it, and we've changed it a few times since. So I definitely appreciate the story on how things work with the logo there, but it's crazy how things come around. So
I like the way they are. I think it looks more like they're cheersing.
Yeah, I think when we first created them, it was like, you're touching on the tops, and no one really cheers a bottle on the tops. So it was like really awkward and weird. Like, who does that? So we were actually thinking of removing them anyways. So then that just kind of pushed us a little bit further when we had that letter that came for us. We're like, all right, no big deal. We're two guys. We don't even have a real company yet, but yet we're still, we're all with it. So, you can see behind me on this side, that's where the logo is right now, where you have the two bottles crossing and there's a space between the two. Had that for ever since. So I think
that's awesome.
It's the most important thing. Like you talk about with the brand identity, when your customers, when you see a beer on the shelf and they walk in to your location to adapt that. And you've done a great job with putting all that together in an area, but you definitely recommend anyone out there that would like to visit, obviously during when COVID decided to leave us, definitely check out their locations in the Boston area. How late in the season do you keep the Owl Nest open? What's your traditional kind of like summer season? I know that this year has been completely different because of COVID, but what's the normal kind of frame from that side for the keeping it open?
We're still hoping to keep it open till I think it's through the end of October.
Okay.
honestly, like we kind of our agreement with DCR, the Department of Conservation and Recreation, allows us to. I think it's keep it open till like mid-November.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't even think it's like reasonable to expect people to come by then. It's kind of like whenever it's too cold, we just stop open. Whenever people start going up, like
it's typically like in New England, the weather is very unpredictable. So once it starts to get pretty cold,
it's rough.
It's pretty bad.
We're on the Charles, we are on the Charles River, right? I mean, as you're getting into Boston, so it's nice during the summer. It's pretty good during the fall. No, it's great during the fall too. It's still pretty temperate, but you hit like late October, that breeze off the water is not comfortable.
Absolutely not. Yeah. Well, Michael, thank you so much for joining us on this virtual happy hour. I know I had a blast chatting with you, talking about your logo story. And I can tell you, as a Connecticut person, I'm excited to start having your beers again. And now I know why they disappeared for a little bit. And now they're coming back. So looking forward to that. Want to give you the floor to kind of have any final thoughts, or where people can find you on the internet, or from a Night Shift perspective, or anything you also want to share with the community.
For sure. I mean, you can find us online. We're on all the social channels. I'd say Instagram is probably like our most active one. It's at Night Shift Brewing. And I mean, I would just say, if you live in the area, look for our beers on shelves. We try and keep incredibly fresh beer out there. We're delivering it ourselves. And we kind of run the gamut from, hoppy stuff to light beer that can replace your Budweiser, your Miller Lite anytime you want. We have a better replacement. To hard seltzer, we have Hoot hard seltzer out there, and I would say it's better than any of the seltzers out there. So we're trying to offer some replacement options that are more craft and more fresh than the other stuff. So I thank you for supporting us here in the area, and if you're not, we hope to have some beer to you soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael, so much. Appreciate you being on the show today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, cheers. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for watching our Thursday virtual happy hour. We're very excited. Hope you had a good time. Just want to remind you as well that we are taking applications for the Untapped Stories and also for the Untapped Badge Contest. In case you missed it at the beginning of the show, we're doing a 10th anniversary party on October 24th from 3 to 6 p.m. And during that live broadcast, we're going to have a special badge for that particular live broadcast. And you, as the Untapped community, could be the one to actually go ahead and make it. So we have a special page, untapped.com/10/contest, where you can enter in all your information here. And the theme of this badge is, what does it mean to be part of the Untapped community? And we want you to be able to kind of facilitate a design here. We have a template you can use to build your badge out there and upload it to the system itself. and we'll be looking forward to reviewing it. So make sure you check out those 2 pieces there for the Untapped 10th anniversary. And make sure you also suggest what breweries you'd like to see brew our special. I remember my first check-in beer, which is going to be a sour ale that we got from Dogfish Head. So check out untapped.com/10. So we appreciate you watching this evening. Thank you so much. Check us back in untapped.tv for next week's episodes that we'll talk about on the site. And we see you back here next week. Have a great weekend, everybody.